Hello and welcome to Shattered Lives. We're here in person today. We're standing on Oxman Town Road, the scene of a stabbing incident, alleged stabbing incident that occurred on Sunday here in the Stoneybatter area. Hello Mick, how are you doing?
So 3 people were injured in this alleged attack. Now we have to be careful because the matter is sub judice, but this is the incident, this is the location of the alleged incident, and you were in court on Monday.
Yeah, I was in court and an individual has been charged in relation to this incident. His name is Gabriel Ferreiro Mata Valadares. He's 29 years of age. Now, he's originally from Brazil, but the address given in court was in Broadstone Avenue. He is accused of 4 separate charges, so that's 2 charges of assault causing harm and 2 charges then in relation to possession of a scissors and possession of a box cutter knife in this area.
So one of the charges of alleged assault causing harm happened here. It relates to an alleged incident here on Oxman Town Road. The other incident, the other charge is on Niall Street, was just literally 100 yards over the road. But so he's charged with assault causing harm to 2 men.
Yeah, and I suppose we're somewhat limited in what we can say when something is before the court. So when we say something sub judice, that's what we're limited in saying. But this individual, he appeared, he was remanded into custody. So he's currently in custody and he's due to appear in Cloverhill District Court on the 18th of February. Some people may be wondering there's no photograph of this individual. That's because he was in custody and remains in custody. There is no photograph that we have, so that is the reason. Generally speaking, there's no grand conspiracy when we cover these things. We'll happily print a photograph of someone if we have a photograph of somebody. But in general, Mick, you were here, you were at the scene when this incident, I suppose, started. And give us kind of a picture, I suppose, if you can, of what it was like just being here covering an event like this.
It was quite calm. So I left here at about 5:30 on Sunday. I think the alleged incident happened sometime between 2:40 and 3 p.m. And when you get to places like this, you would expect there's a lot of frenetic activity. The time I got here, it was getting dark, and it was very calm. I have to say there was a lot of Gardaí about, but everybody was very, very calm. So I was doing what the Gardaí would call door-to-door inquiries. You and I would call door knocks, knocking on a lot of doors. And one thing I wanted to say, I was here for 2 days, and I have to say the people of Oxman Town Road and Niall Street and Carnew Street and various other places, including Manor Place, they were all fantastic. Yeah. There was no aggression. You know, we can talk about this generally, but you know, media descend on somewhere like this. There are probably 20 people, 20 journalists, all knocking on doors and stuff. And everybody I met, young, old, male, female, foreign, Irish, they were all fantastic. Nobody was aggressive. Nobody slammed the door in your face. I must have knocked on maybe a dozen doors. Because you are, as we'd say in Belfast, you're running around like a blue arse fly, and you're just trying to get people to talk to you. And that means knocking on doors. And I'm not the only person knocking on doors. Everybody was fine. And even there's this thing, in journalism we call it sort of second day itis. So when you come back the second day, people can turn.
You've overstayed your welcome.
You've overstayed your welcome.
Yeah.
And they were grand. There was absolutely no problem. So I just wanted to place on record my sort of gratitude and thanks to the people of this area for being so understanding, not only to me, but to every other journalist here. And there was no negativity and there was no argy-bargy.
Because I think generally there is an understanding that, you know, the media have to report on incidents like these, and, you know, they, you know, to also get to the facts of them, you know, and we can maybe speak about this later in the podcast, you know. We're limited in what we can say. We're bound by the law, and we have to report on an incident within the parameters of that, you know. So people might wonder, you know, why aren't you saying this or why aren't you saying that? Well, we're bound by the parameters of the law and what we can say. So there's an individual now currently charged before the courts, and that's as far as we can take it. But this was an incident that, you know, obviously sparked a lot of attention and headlines all over the country, and so that's why we come out to a street like this, why we come to an incident like this. But I think that's interesting that people were happy to talk to you, because we often, there's a perception that the media gets a bit of flack and a bit of a hard time. So, you know, I think people did understand the gravity of the situation and the reason why you had to be here, for example.
Yes, and there's a bit of a joke going around, or there was a bit of a joke going around on Sunday that half the Irish Times live in this area. Yeah. So maybe that's why people were so sort of receptive. But look, you know, fair play to them. They were all absolutely fantastic, and there was no negativity whatsoever. And maybe you're right. Maybe they understood. Look, we have a job to do, so it's fine.
Yeah. And look, it has been well reported, and I think we can say, there were individuals injured in this alleged incident. Thankfully, they are all recovering now. They have left the hospital, I believe, all of them have at this stage. So, it was a serious incident, but the guards got it under control. And even as we're talking here now, I think behind us, there are Gardaí still doing door-to-door inquiries in relation to this.
Yes, and even on Monday when I was here, there would have been a significant enough Garda presence, mobile patrols and that sort of thing, and even, as you say, door-to-door inquiries. So look, it's obviously a major Garda investigation. Now, the one thing I'll ask, Mr. Valadares, he was remanded in custody.
Yes.
Did he make any response? We always, the pro forma, what did he reply to the charges?
So generally speaking, when people appear before the courts and they're charged, we hear from a prosecuting Garda who gives evidence of arrest, charge and caution. And in this case, Mr. Valadares, he pleaded... he hasn't pled in this case, so he has been charged, and when he was formally charged in the station, he is cautioned and he's given an opportunity to respond to that. So he made no reply after caution to three of those charges, but for one of them, one of the assault charges, he said that the quote is, "I was afraid to be killed."
Okay.
So that's the evidence heard in court. There'll be more evidence heard as this case progresses. It's going to be heard before Cloverhill District Court, as I mentioned to you, later this month.
And we might just explain this. The charge is put to you, you're cautioned, and then you're asked, do you want to make any comment?
Yes.
And guards write it down, and they have to say what it said.
Yeah.
So that is what the Garda officer took down when Mr. Valadares was charged with that offence.
And generally speaking, people give no comment or they don't say anything. They make no reply. So, I mean, more and more we are seeing examples of cases where people are saying more than that. It's usually a one-line thing. "I was afraid to be killed" is what he said. We can't say any more than that. We can't contextualise that. We can't give opinion on that. That's what he said after caution, and that's as far as we can take it at this moment.
Okay, so moving away from this, and I emphasise this is not in relation to this case, but it's just interesting. People think that there is automatic privilege, or we can say whatever we want, what is said in court about how people respond to the charges, but generally there is legal advice. Look, somebody might say something when they're charged, but that not might be their position when the trial starts 2 years down the road. So just say it's a murder case and somebody says, "Yeah, I did it and I'm sorry." Our legal advice was, no, you can't really say that, because, and maybe our different legal advice is different, but because there could be a change of mind 18 months down the road. So that's just one thing that we are careful about. And I personally thought, you can say what you want, but there is legal advice. Well, the position might change. So just people might be interested to hear that.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of give that context, because people may wonder, why aren't you saying certain things? We can't say things when matters are before the courts, and that's just the way that it is. And this individual hasn't had an opportunity to plead yet, guilty or not guilty, and that's the next process in this. A book of evidence will have to be served all of before that, so we might not be talking about this case for some time.
Look, who knows what will happen, but realistically you're talking at least a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll leave that there, we'll talk to you about a couple of other topics in a moment.
Elsewhere.
Okay, so we're back. We've moved location, so we have a couple of other things we want to talk about.
That bird has us in its sights. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, we've scouted multiple locations, but we keep getting various things keep getting in our way. So yeah, look, I wanted to kind of talk about more generally something that's been frustrating me, and I'm sure it's frustrating you. Generally, covering big stories like the one where we were just talking about, massive incidents. Unfortunately, now social media, it takes on a life of its own, and there's a narrative then put out there and it takes over. And I think it's up to the likes of ourselves and other journalists in the industry to sadly constantly combat those fires of misinformation. And I just never thought that the job would be like, nearly so much of the job now is more about combating the misinformation online than it is actually just reporting the facts of an incident. And I find that really frustrating.
Yeah, so a couple of points. Firstly, a lot of people think misinformation is stuff that they don't like, right?
Yeah.
Let them at it. People can say what they want. There's absolutely no problem, right? And it's not our job to say, well, that doesn't go, I get whatever political narrative I have, and I don't know what my narratives are and anything's grand. That's why I'm a reporter. I don't like having opinions. But there is a massive difference between somebody talking shite and somebody deliberately using misinformation about various things. Now, here's my problem. Once a case is sub judice, we're hidebound, right? we're completely hidebound because the man or woman who's sitting on the old 46A typing into Twitter or stuff about X or Y case, that's no problem. They can say what they want. If we go outside the very strict constraints of sub judice and contempt of court, we're the ones who are in trouble.
Yeah.
So the way I leave it is, effectively, I would try to get involved in telling people to cop on, but it's too much hassle. You're going to end up having rows with people on Twitter, and my attitude is, all right, let them at it. Now, that people, you may not want to hear that, but I just can't sit there and go, right, look, I'm not going to get involved in every court case because people are spammers.
Yeah, I'd like to subscribe to that, but unfortunately, when it came to yesterday, for example, just covering two big crime stories, and the narrative. And granted, right, ex-Twitter is not reflective of reality, and I'm sure that there's a certain cohort of society that are on that, whatever. And people are entitled to their opinions, by the way. I've no problem with that in a democracy. I have a problem, though, with misinformation being spread and then the media being targeted for supposedly being in on some grand conspiracy to cover up XYZ. When someone's before the courts, we can only say what is said in court. It's as simple as that. Seagulls are out to get us now. But that's what we're limited to. We're limited to what's said in court. And then aside from that, I just wanted to mention, we are always bound by trying to make sure that we don't say things that are potentially harmful as well. I'll give an example, right? So yesterday there was a big story in relation to Clare. A number of schools in County Clare were closed as a result of an alleged firearms threat. Now, it was obvious probably that it was more than likely a hoax, but we had to go and investigate that. We had to find out what the story was, and Gardaí were investigating it that morning. A number of schools were closed. This email had been sent out, a bizarre email, naming a child and the address that the child lived at, and saying that this person was going to shoot up schools, basically. Obviously, Gardaí went, they found this individual, they spoke to him. He's a 15-year-old teenage boy, and it appears now he'd nothing to do with it. He's a completely innocent young lad. But that didn't stop every gobshite on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, from sharing this young lad's name and his address all over social media and making him out to be some sort of, firearms enthusiast, terrorist. Yeah. And I got feel for that young fella's family, but it's an example of social media running rampant. It's not police, it's not checked. That's still up there on social media. In the meantime, we're trying to actually find out the facts of the story and report it accurately and fairly. And I'm just finding that more frustrating, that we're more so trying to combat stuff like that than just give you the story.
But do you not think people in cases like this, if there is whatever word you want to use, misinformation or whatever, they will come to journalists like us to see what the real crack is?
Yeah.
I mean, and more people are asking me, did this happen? And you're going, and even through DMs, whatever, because, I can't really talk about this, but no, that's not a bollocks. You know what I mean? So I do think, I've certainly found maybe in the last year more people coming, and to be fair to some people, I can't remember what it was, but there were a couple of incidents last year. I don't even think people were charged, but people thought it may have been a certain event happening, and I was going, no, it's not. It's just something, some mental health issue or something like that. You know what I mean? And now this wasn't one of the big ones, shall we say, but there was a lot of noise about various things on Twitter for a while, and people asked me, and I just said, no, it's this, and they accepted it.
We have, though, haven't we? I think it's fair to say, changed how we report certain facts when it comes to crimes that are being committed. We now go into way more detail than we ever did before when it comes to someone's nationality and where they're from. And I feel a bit funny about this in one sense, because I kind of think, what relevance has it got to the story? But it's become such an issue, the immigration issue, and that people complain about foreign nationals, and it's become a talking point for the quote-unquote far right, so that we are going out of our way now to report someone's nationality when they're involved in an incident, not to quell conspiracy theories, but more so to just keep the facts straight, because people go crazy online and they say such and such a person is from such and such a country and they are illegal and they should be deported, and oftentimes that's not true. Sometimes that could be true, but oftentimes that's not true. And so unfortunately now we do something we've never done before. We say, so if we know the facts, such and such a person who's from Dublin or Romania or whatever, we've had to get into that as a result of trying to combat misinformation.
Well, I'm much older than you, and I think every...
Significantly older.
And I think every story I've done has had John Smith from Dublin or Pavel from Romania or whatever. I've always done that, and I think it actually does a complete disservice to readers and listeners if they don't say that they're, if they're Scottish, if they're English, if they're Welsh, if they're from the north, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I suppose
put the facts in.
We're more conscious of it now, though. Would that be fair to say, as in general? Maybe you reported it, but I think we as a media are now more conscious of, even press offices, even the Garda press office will go out of their way now to kind of give contextualisation in relation to whether someone is, seeking asylum or not, and they'll go into that level of detail they never had to go into before.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But look, we just do our job, and there's a case, I'm not going to talk about it, but there was a case where I know there was some journalistic debate about should we mention this person's nationality.
Yes.
Right? And for me, it was a no-brainer because that's news, and we should not really be there to censor news.
Yeah.
Look, you know what? Justice Paul Carney, one of the most eminent Irish judges ever. Okay, he unfortunately died a few years ago. He was in the Central Criminal Court, so he did all the murders and rapes. And I always remember him talking about you have to accept the robustness of the Irish juror, right? I think we have to accept the robustness of the Irish people. And it's not our job to censor the news, no matter how hard that may be. If a man is from outer Mongolia, we say he's from outer Mongolia. If he's from Foxrock, like Grindoir was when he was living there, we say he's from Foxrock. It's not our job to hide information we can print from the paper. That's my opinion.
I agree with that, and we're not hiding it, and we're often accused of hiding facts. We certainly don't, and sometimes we don't know things. We don't know everything, and it's up to us to go off and source things and find things out. I often get frustrated that people give out to us on social media and they say, well, you didn't report this, and then they send you something that they've actually read in the media. So they cherry pick what they do and don't want to read in the media. And I think the case you're referring to, we have to be careful about it, is before the courts. People constantly get onto us about a particular case that is before the courts, but it's a very serious case involving an alleged incident that occurred in the city centre where a number of children were allegedly stabbed, and it's a very serious incident, and someone is before the courts in relation to it. And they constantly get onto us saying, why haven't you released a photograph of this person? And there's a conspiracy that we're holding back on a photo of this person. As we've explained earlier in relation to a case we were talking about, we don't always have photographs of people. If someone has their photo on social media and we've verified it and we've checked it with sources, or we've seen the face ourselves and we're able to check it in court, we'll run it. In that case, there is no photo of this individual. There's no conspiracy. If we had a photo of this man and we knew it and we could verify it to be true, not just because some twat on Twitter says it's him, but we've actually verified that it's him, we will print his photograph tomorrow. Trust me, I'd love to print a photograph of this person. He's before the courts. It's going to be heard again. There's no conspiracy. There's no cover-up. It's just going through the process.
What I will say, and I can say this because it's my job and it's your job, the first thing we do in any homicide, in any road death, in any murder, in any serious crime is we look for pictures.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. We try and get a name and then we try and get a picture. And you could spend a day looking for a picture.
And we've both been actively, to be fair, still looking for a photo of this particular individual, and we'd run it tomorrow if we had it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not magicians.
It's as simple as that. I just want to briefly mention, as we always do on this podcast, there have been sadly 2 more homicide incidents in the past week or so. So tell us a bit about just the incident in West Dublin. We did talk about it on the podcast last week, but we now know the name of the man who was lost his life in this incident.
So again, we're calling it a homicide. It's a man called Alexandru Dumitrascu. He's 37. He was from Moldova, but had been living in West Dublin in the Clonsilla area, I believe, for several years. Now, a man is before the courts. He has been charged with assault causing harm to Mr. Dumitrascu, so we're limited as to what we can say. But we do know that he was from Moldova. The deceased person, he was the victim of an alleged assault, and he was in Connolly Hospital in Blanchardstown. And I think he was being treated, for about 5 or 6 days, and then he lost his life. I think the alleged assault was on Sunday night, and he died late on Thursday night.
Yes.
So it's another of those alleged one-punch incidents. Nobody has been charged directly over Mr. Dumitrascu's death. A man is charged with assault causing harm. Then up in the north, there's a man called Stephen Holmes, another assault incident. He was allegedly assaulted, and then he died a few days later, and a man is also charged in relation to his assault. But in both those cases, nobody has been charged with his death, shall we say.
It's just illustrative of every time we do these podcasts, there is another homicide incident. It's just the way that it goes, almost on a weekly basis now at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this before, but I did say I expected one a week, and we're effectively going for one a week. There might be some weeks where there'll be 2 or 3, but really, north and south, you're talking one a week. So, Paul, as well as the 2 homicides, there's some breaking news today about a case that you had a lot of interest in.
Yeah, we just want to mention this because obviously we did a podcast on it, and I'm delighted to finally report some good news for once, which is that the DPP appears to be appealing the concurrent sentence handed down to the hit and run driver that killed Joe Drennan in Limerick in 2022. There was a lot of reaction to this online, outrage that this individual was handed down a concurrent sentence, and the family of Joe Drennan, he was a journalism student, he was a young lad cut down in the prime of his life. They were outraged that they felt that the sentence didn't really punish him for what he did to Joe Drennan, because he was sentenced effectively for a separate crime, and the 2 matters were to run concurrently, meaning he's only going to serve an 8-year sentence, of which he's already served a significant chunk. So the DPP are going to appeal this, and I've spoken to Marguerite Drennan and to Sarah Drennan today, and they are both delighted, and they've thanked the media for the coverage, and they've thanked the public for the support. They went to the Dáil yesterday, they went to the offices of the DPP. They have been hitting the pavements for the past 2 weeks trying to highlight this case, trying to get justice for Joe, and so the DPP is going to appeal this, and it'll be before the court of appeal, and it'll be up then to another judge to decide whether to re-sentence this individual to a more harsh sentence or not.
And I'm not going to say it's the media's work on this, but I think you have to pay tribute to the family for not giving up and using every avenue and every way they could to try and get a decision on this.
I'm a big believer in the power of media. Obviously we're biased, but I think that family, maybe it's because of the fact that Joe is a journalism student, they believe in the power of the media. They went out there and they spoke to us, they spoke to so many other people, they constantly got Joe in the news, and I think that public pressure, I'm not saying the DPP wouldn't have still appealed it, but that public pressure certainly has made them move quite quickly, I think, on this. So look,
sunlight is the best disinfectant. It really
absolutely
is. It's. I'm not saying we're brilliant. I'm just saying that families and loved ones can be proactive and say, I'm not having this, and run their own campaign, and things like this happen.
Well, as they've said themselves, it's very sad that they had to do that in the first place. And it says a lot about maybe the state of the justice system in their mind. It's hard not to have sympathy for them. They've gone through a lot as a family. They've gone through the court system, and they've felt that they didn't get justice. So, look, hopefully it works out for them this time around. It'll be some time before it'll be heard by the Court of Appeal. But we've already seen examples of other cases where someone was given, in the case of Cathal Crotty, for example, he got a fully suspended sentence. The judge looked at it another way, and now he's serving a 2-year prison sentence. So it's entirely possible for another judge to see it another way.
Right, this seagull is definitely
it's out to get us.
It's going for you, is it? All right, we'll leave it there, shall we?
Yes, let's get in out of the cold. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.